concern about China? It looks almost like you are carrying a campaign against China.
Right now, if you look at our debt, there's a considerable amount of debt that is owed to China. Someone can say, yes, what about America? What about India? True. So the common man.
Are you, some feel that you are doing a campaign for India here.
I'll say this right here. If tomorrow, if India is not willing to restructure our debt, I would say the same against India.
Do you have trust in the individual Ranil Wickremesinghe?
Well, what are we supposed to do? He's the president of the country. But like I said, he is somebody who understands this issue.
Hello and welcome to our final episode of On Fire for the year 2022. I'm Easwaran Rutnam. The year has been very eventful. We saw a lot of protests. Former President Gotabaya Rajapaksas had to step down. There's a serious economic crisis the country is facing and a number of other issues as well. But one issue that has been dragging over the last couple of years is the issue of a political solution for the Tamils. The Tamil National Alliance has been pushing for a solution for the Tamils, but that solution has yet to be achieved. Joining me on the program today is TNA MP Rasamanickam, Shanakiyan Rasamanickam. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on the program, Israel.
So, firstly, what is the state of your push or your party's push for the political solution for the Tamils?
Well, when you just, in your introduction, you said that for the last 2 years or few years that we have been talking about a Tamil political solution, but the fact is that it's for the last 7 decades, even pre-independence and post-independence, Tamil political parties have on various occasions have tried to resolve this issue through negotiation with whichever government that has been in power. In the first 3 decades after independence, repeatedly Tamil leaders were the efforts that the Tamil leaders took forward ended up with no result, primarily because the leaders in the south or the prime ministers at the time purely didn't want to or didn't have the political will to resolve these issues, and as we all know, which led to a civil war which lasted nearly 3 more decades. And most of the protests that happened this year, most of the country's economic most of the reasons for this country's economic crisis have been a result of this long-standing political issue not being resolved. So, as our party, Ilangai Thamil Arasu Katchi, Tamil National Alliance is an alliance, and I represent the Ilangai Thamil Arasu Katchi, the ITAC, which was formed in 1949. So, if anybody is going to say, this entire political solution issue is not an issue anymore, they are wrong, because my party came into existence to resolve this issue. And 73 years later, my party's convention was just 1 week ago on the 18th of December, 73rd anniversary. So we have tried, right? So this again is another opportunity that has risen, and our party is positively engaging in these dialogues, in these discussions, because what else do we do? Just because we have been betrayed, I would say, by successive governments, including the Rajapaksas, even Gotabaya Rajapaksas, invited us for discussions and dialogue, and he was pro-devolution. He was, at one point, he was telling the TNA representatives about the positive side of devolution, as if we were opposed to it, right? So, and President Ranil Wickremesinghe, of course, is fully aware of this issue. He's been in Parliament since the 70s, and he has seen, he has been part of many dialogues either from the opposition or from the government, and he understands the importance of resolving this issue. So, I hope, as our party, I hope that these dialogues, even though the timeline does sound quite, it sounds a bit unrealistic to say issue that's 75 years old, 74 years old will be resolved within 50 odd days is sounds unrealistic. There's every possibility that it can be resolved because there's nothing that we need to prepare.
Do you have trust in the individual Ranil Wickremesinghe?
Well, what are we supposed to do? He's the president of the country. But like I said, he is somebody who understands this issue. But so therefore, there may be a possibility that he may deliver because, see, President Gotabaya Rajapaksas had absolutely no clue about the importance of the Tamil issue because even in his address, first address as the president, or when he first addressed the parliament, or when he prorogued parliament and when parliament reconvened, he mentioned nothing about Tamil people's issues or political solution. It was more development because he clearly didn't understand. But if you look at Ranil Wickremesinghe, he's in his maiden his throne speech, you could call it a throne speech in parliament. There was emphasis given to this issue. So right now, this is my personal take. This is not my party's view on this. My personal take is that President Ranil Wickremesinghe has achieved everything except for achieving the height of being an elected president. All along the last few months, all these criticism that they put up against him is saying, he's not a democratically elected president, that he is a president who came through the back door, that he is not that his president's legitimacy is questioned. So I think for him to go any further, the only thing that he can achieve from now is to be elected president. And to be elected president, he understands to get this country back on track, get the country's economy back on track, that an issue that has been dragging on for 70 plus years needs to be resolved. I mean, everyone has visions of wanting to be Lee Kuan Yew's or Mahathir Mohamad's or maybe even Lincoln's or or even President said some referred to. So everybody has aspirations to become leave a legacy behind. Every leader wants to be Lincoln or Mahathir Mohamad or Lee Kuan Yew, and President in fact drew comparisons between him and Winston Churchill. So if President Ranil Wickremesinghe may want to leave a legacy behind as the one who resolved this issue that nobody wanted to touch. So look,
but there is this push to get him out even now. I mean, like you said, since he's not he doesn't have the mandate of the people. Protests are still continuing. People want him out, or some people want him out. Some politicians want him out as well. Do you think that now is the time to do that sort of change? I mean, when you're discussing and negotiating with someone, and like you said, he has the understanding of the situation, would another face come into the situation, like change the entire setup?
Well, like I said, as a party, as MPs from representing the North and the East, we can only be hopeful and we can only be optimistic, and we don't want our people to say that we haven't tried. We don't want the international community to say that we were the ones who sabotaged any of these discussions, that we were the reason why that these didn't go through. Different people may want to topple this government or to get rid of President Wickremesinghe, but if you look at the numbers, President Ranil Wickremesinghe's term doesn't end till end of November 2024 officially. President Wickremesinghe clearly has a comfortable majority in parliament with SLPP support. At the same time, President Wickremesinghe also gets the edge of being able to dissolve parliament anytime when he wants after March. Till March, see, in fact I said that President is going to be a prisoner of the SLPP if he gets elected. That's what I said in parliament before he got elected as president through parliament. But after March, there is a possibility that SLPP will become President Wickremesinghe's prisoner, because President Wickremesinghe can dissolve parliament whenever he wants. So I think there is no such thing as what is the right time to resolve this. Even today is the day that you should resolve this, because the entire country's future depends on this. I mean, people can say, I mean, I listen to a lot of talk shows, I listen to a lot of programs, and the rhetoric that is being put out is about අපේ රාණ්ඩුවක් આવත් සහන දෙනවා, අපි ආවොත් එහෙම අරක කරනවා, or we will do that. But the common man may actually feel that, you know, that these are promises, but actually the ground situation is that people have lost faith in all politicians, right? So unless, I mean, so just because they say this on their political, you know, campaigns or on the stage, I don't know how much people actually buy into it. So to really resolve this economic crisis, we need like a large infusion of cash. It's simple as that. See, I mean, this IMF program, I have been very critical of China's position on the negotiations, and that is, if you look deep into it, the government can't say this because the government can't, you know, criticize another country. But I can do it from the, I'm doing it on behalf of the people of Sri Lanka.
Let's come to it. I wanted to talk about China as well, but before we come to that, I mean, since you're talking about people losing faith and interest in politicians, do you think that ITAC is also losing popularity? I mean, at the last elections, we saw Vigneshwaran coming into the scene, Ponnambalam coming into the scene as well. It seems that, you know, people are, at least in the north, you know, taking this whole line of, you know, a divided state as opposed to a united state, which is what the TNA is pushing for. Do you see that happening now?
Sorry, what's the TNA pushing for?
That the TNA wants a united country, right? I mean, that's the position that you're taking right now. Whereas we had, at least earlier, people like Vigneshwaran were saying that, you know, you need a separate state at one point at least.
Well, I'm not going to comment on what Vigneshwaran may or may have not said, but TNA's position is, you know, within one Sri Lanka, maximum power devolution. So, you know, the people just get stuck on terminology. You see, they hold on to one, they say federal. We have absolutely no idea of what federal means. Or they say Ekiya Rajya, Aikiya Rajya, unitary. Some of these people who speak about this have absolutely no clue about what it actually even means. Their only understanding about these terms are based on what the likes of Vimal Veeravansa has been preaching over the last 2 decades or 3 decades for their political survival. So in terms of ITAC's popularity reducing, I would say yes, I agree with you that from 2015 to 2020, the TNA as a whole, and within the TNA, the ITAC had severely lost ground. That I have to agree to that, because Gajendra Kumar Ponnambalam and his party and Vigneshwaran, mind you, they were both part of the TNA, and they left the TNA because they felt that the TNA's positions weren't hardline enough, that we were more moderates, that our party's position is that we want this to be resolved. We don't want to keep this, you know, if it was to be a wound, we don't want this wound to fester. We want to heal it and, you know, get along, move on, resolve all these issues. So when we resolve these issues, you know, we now, for an instance, right now, I think Gajendra Kumar Ponnambalam's party does not even want to participate in the dialogue with the president. So I don't understand what they actually want, because, I mean, you want to resolve something and then there's a dialogue, you have to engage in it to see what's in it. Then if you're not satisfied, I mean, even our party, if we feel that we are being taken for a ride, we'll probably call it off. But, you know, the timeline is such that February 4th is what President has said. So there's no harm in trying for a month or two. But the likes of, well, that's what these guys, that's their view. But for us also, right now on the ground, I think we have made a lot of progress since 2020, and I think if there was to be an election now, most of these names that you mentioned may not even get re-elected, because they understand that in the last 2.5 years that these guys who promised the world to the Tamil people have delivered absolutely nothing except for just you know, issuing statements. And one reason why TNA's vote bank reduced was because people felt that TNA was taken for a ride by the good governance government, Ranil Wickremesinghe, and therefore that, you know, TNA took the Tamil people for a ride along. That's what this was a sentiment.
But aren't you going to face that same risk now by negotiating? Isn't that why Ponnambalam is also staying out of these negotiations?
Well, that exactly. So see, as a political party that is for the people, our political positions are for the people. We are not here just to increase our numbers. Right, this could have been a good time when the country is facing a crisis to, you know, stay away and, you know, stir up more, I mean, you know, very hardline positions in the north and the east against his government, because the government clearly does not have a lot of friends. But our position is that we want this to be resolved so our people can also, as all Sri Lankans, can have a better future. So, you know, I am 32 years of age, and most people come into politics after they retire from their general service, right? So for them, it's a matter of just carrying out their retirement, being in non-politics. But for me, for someone like myself, I am spending the prime of my life being involved in politics. So for someone like myself, the only reason that drives me or pushes me is to resolve this issue on behalf of the people that elected me. So therefore, we are positively engaging, and we may again face a risk of being accused of being betrayed. But how are we to know unless we try? We can't, we can't sit at home and say, what if we get betrayed? So let's not take a risk. I mean, we were elected to Parliament to resolve this issue. So even at the cost of our popularity or our, whatever fall that we are going to have, we are still, as a party, we are taking that risk and we are moving forward. But the only solace is that the timeline is short. Yeah. In the good governance time, 2015, 2019, we were indefinitely, it was getting dragged on. But again, 2018, there was a constitutional draft that was prepared, was ready to be submitted to Parliament, when Maithripala Sirisena just dissolved Parliament overnight unconstitutionally. So, I mean, but it's very hard to explain this, that for people, it's almost like, why couldn't this issue be resolved? But they don't understand that the amount of discussion that needs to go into it, the amount of agreements that we need to come to resolve this, how the parliamentary system works, how for a common man who's just a farmer or a fisherman or a labourer or is a former militant or whoever, for them it's like it's almost as if you just go and agree on something. But it's not that simple. But the likes of Gajan and Vigneswaran use that to their advantage to get re-elected. I mean,
but how do you convince the youth in Jaffna, the university students who seem to be, towing that hardline position?
That's not true. They aren't towing that hardline position. It's just that they want this issue resolved, and different people have different opinions on how this should be resolved. So I wouldn't say that everybody is like that. There is a percentage of everyone. I mean, in the south, if there is room for people like Vimal Veeravansa, definitely there is space for that in the north as well. There is no difference between that. So there is in a democratic space, all views are there, but the majority of the views are the moderate views, which is why the Tamil National Alliance has 10 seats out of we have 3 seats with Vigneswaran and Gajendra Kumar Ponnambalam are 2 seats plus their nationality list is 3, and we have 10. We have representation in all 8 districts. The 2 name mentioned, I generally dislike to mention names and speak, but since you put the names forward, I have to respond. But both their parties are restricted only to Jaffna, and both their vote banks put together is about 80,000 to 90,000 votes altogether. So whereas the Tamil National Alliance, we have the vote share of almost more than 1 million votes. So you see the moderates outnumber, rather the moderate views that we have outnumber whatever views that they have. I'm not saying they have different views to us, but whatever views that they have and us is outnumbered.
Do you think, I think MP Sridharan had said this somewhere, that now is probably the last opportunity that Sri Lanka has to resolve this issue under the leadership of R. Sambandhan. Do you think that, his words are true, that, if this is not resolved now, that then, you're losing?
Well, that is basically assuming that Mr. Sambandhan doesn't remain in politics for too long or something. So Sridharan is entitled to his own views. He's just another MP in the party, just like myself. Like I said earlier, that this is my personal view. That could be his personal view, so I don't want to comment on that.
But what is your view? I mean, again, a question is asked: shouldn't there be a new leadership now in the TNA?
Well, the Tamil National Alliance right now, yes, there are a lot of dialogues and discussions going back and forth about who the next leader should be after Mr. Sambandhan. I think it's very clear that who can play this role. It's very, very obvious.
But there is a division there as well.
Well, if Mahinda Rajapaksha, Gotabaya Rajapaksha, Basil Rajapaksha within one family can have differences in opinion, the Tamil National Alliance that has 3 political parties, various districts, people from different walks of life, definitely there will be differences in opinion. But end of the day, it's about how we resolve those issues. So I think that's an internal matter that we would resolve when the time is right. I think the media also has created so much of hype about it, especially in the north and east. I mean, in the south, it's not even known. I think you are aware of it because you follow the news in the north and the east. It's been sensationalized. I don't think there is any real competition there. There is a clear favorite there, and people are aware of it. And when there is a clear favorite, I mean, even for Gotabaya Rajapaksa to be made the candidate, within the own family they say there was opposition. So, I mean, what more to talk about? Who and what and all that. There's within political party, that's normal.
Now that a process has commenced, now that the TNA is negotiating with Ranil Wickremesinghe to resolve this Tamil issue, would the TNA support a push? Now the SJB is pushing for snap elections. They want Ranil out. They want a new government in place as well. Would the TNA, in your opinion, not in your opinion, but in your party's opinion, obviously, support an early election?
Well, I think the first person to say that Parliament should be dissolved was Mr. M.A. Sumandran, who's the official spokesperson of our party. So I don't think anything has changed of that, because the Parliament has lost its mandate, is what our party's position has been all along. See, it's very simple. Everybody wants to go for a snap election. But I hear that you only need a simple majority in Parliament. Only 113 members need to get together, and Parliament can be dissolved. It's that simple. Someone brings in a motion, and it can be done in a day. So everyone who wants fresh elections, I mean, even let's say the breakaway faction of the SLPP are talking about legitimacy of the president and the government. I mean, we have 10 MPs. There is not much that we can do about snap elections with 10 MPs. But all those put together, I don't think they have 113. That's a problem. Even if they, I mean, if President's budget was passed with more than a simple majority, I mean, just it wasn't.
It wasn't a realistic call.
Well, it wasn't even like tight. 121 to 85 or something, and we abstained. And so you need 130 to dissolve Parliament. So whoever wants to dissolve Parliament, I think one more thing, I think a lot of the backbenchers in the SLPP will never allow for a dissolution of the Parliament, because some of them feel that this is their first and last term, and most of these guys who, I know some of them robbed from the Pradesh Sabha level, robbed from 5,000 rupees to 50,000 to 5 million to 50 million, and they robbed, and they built a little empire for themselves, and all that was brought down overnight on the 9th of May after the violence outside Gotagogama. I don't approve of the violence. I don't approve of the attacks on the houses. I don't approve of any of that. But I'm just telling you the fact. So these guys are now back to zero, right? So they need at least a year or two to at least steal a little bit more. So
no, you're negotiating also with a president who is working with individuals like Sivanesa Chandrakanthan, who has a lot of baggage on himself. Tamils are also not happy with him. The international community is not happy with him. I mean, during these negotiations, do you feel that this can also be used to sort of highlight your concerns about someone like Pillayan?
Well, Pillayan, Douglas Devananda, they're all part of the same lot. But it's something that we could actually bring up in our discussions. But I think, like I told you, Sharon, it's Pillayan is just one MP, right? So Douglas Devananda and his party is just 2 MPs. I don't think we need to worry too much about what their opinions are. And also, if President is to put forward a proposal, and if they are going to oppose it or support it, we'll wait and see. I mean, in our minds, Pillayan and Douglas are not even worth worth our time. Yes.
But then they are also accused of various crimes committed in the past. Isn't accountability, justice also an important part of?
Well, accountability and justice, we have been pushing severely or heavily, and and we have been pushing for accountability and human rights for all Sri Lankans. when the Muslim Janasa burial issue came up, we were the ones who we were the first to voice it out, even when the Muslim MPs were quiet. Even when there were atrocities committed against the Aragalaya folks, Tamil National Alliance stood up for it. We spoke in Parliament. So the accountability and human rights side of it is a parallel, they are interlinked, but the constitution process and the human rights issues are things that go parallel. So we are definitely pushing on those. Unfortunately, the cases against the likes of Pullian were dropped. The charges were dropped. So interesting, someone told me recently that the Gotabaya Rajapaksas' priority was, to win the election, one of the main priorities was to get rid of the cases. I mean, I don't know how he could manage to do that, but that someone close to him told me that, so that he's happily in the US now, I see. Or was it in Dubai?
Yeah, he had gone to Dubai and then from there was supposed to go to the US. Yeah,
lucky.
So you have been very vocal on China's involvement in Sri Lanka, mainly on the investment side. What is your main concern about China? It looks almost like you are carrying a campaign against China.
Well, if you look at my interventions in Parliament from the time I got elected, even before the Port City Commission bill was passed in December 2020, I was very vocal about that the Port City being given to the Chinese, about the Hambantota port. And also, if you look at my speeches, if somebody who's followed my intervention in Parliament, they would know that I've always highlighted about what China's global initiatives have, done to countries, and the results, before this economic crisis even started. This debt trap, or that people can, I am a lone MP saying this against a superpower in the world. So naturally the superpower will have more ways of, communicating or putting their message into the society, as opposed to a MP from the opposition from Batiklo. So I was trying to raise awareness, and look, right now we are in a situation like this because there is extensive amount of money that we have borrowed. Now someone can say, what can they do? It was the Sri Lankan government that borrowed. Why are you? I was going to say the same thing. Actually. Why are you? So the thing is, they knew that the country's economy was collapsing, and there are allegations against them of giving bribes to the Rajapaksas during that period. There are allegations about the highways being built at 2 or 3 times the cost of them being built. There are cases against, I think, I saw on the media also about some of these bribery related issues. So that is one thing. Let's say again that what can they do? It's the Sri Lankans who took the bribes. Right now, if you look at our debt, there's a considerable amount of debt that is owed to China. Someone can say, yes, what about America? What about India? True. So the Paris Club, and then the Indians, and then the private ISBs. The private ISBs they're private. They can be pushed, if the IMF pushes them, they can be, pushed or cornered into agreeing, right? It's not like they can say, no, we are not going to agree. And most of them have already made their money, because, they have been lending at very high percentages. So right now, from what I gather, the Paris Club and the Indians have said that, okay, if China is ready to restructure and not refinance, we will do it. So therefore, they don't want to officially, this is not something that they've told me. This is what I gather from the news. What they've said is that they have positively responded, and the central bank governor also has said that it's delays with China's negotiation. He had said due to the Chinese party's convention and due to COVID restrictions. China is doing all their business ventures in their country. It's not like their country has come to a standstill because their convention and the COVID break. And then the president himself had said at the, I think, some economic forum, that we need to come to an agreement with China. So, which is why I said that if China, now if you look at this Chinese aid, this rice donation
Yes.
program, all these things are happening in the north and east. Even yesterday I had posted on Twitter about how
Quality.
the rice was not fit for consumption. Now what I and also you see on Twitter, and also, you know, an embassy shouldn't, you know, tag a MP of a country and say, you know, get your facts right. If there was some genuine concern, they could have reached out and said, look, this is our position. But I mean, it's very clear. So even this rice aid and all that, if they agree to the negotiations, if they had agreed last year, by now we would have been in a better position. So on one hand, you know, it seems as if they are stalling the negotiations. On the other hand, they are trying to do a PR campaign by donating rice and dry rations. So for the common man,
Are you, I mean, some feel that you are doing a campaign for India here.
well, look, I'll say this right here. If tomorrow, if India is not willing to restructure our debt, I would say the same against India. And in the past also, you see, people have very, you know, very short memory. I think Mr. Sumandra and I were the first people to ever lead a protest against the Indian fishermen encroaching our waters. We took boats, 200 odd boats from Mullaitivu to Jaffna. So, you know, then how is that, you know, then India should have told me not to do it. I shouldn't have done it, right? Because it's against the Indian illegal trawlers. And in Parliament, I spoke about another issue where there was a tax holiday given to a company, and I said, this is wrong. If you want to give this tax holiday, give it. You know, I gave, you know, some proposals, and so I have always, you know, voiced out what I feel is right. If you know, whatever countries that they accuse me of being, you know, talking on behalf of some country, when there is something that is detrimental to the country because of them, then my voice would be there for that as well. So overall, this is not like some game. This is the lives of 22 million Sri Lankans that the world superpower is playing with. Economy of 20 trillion. We're talking of like some $7 or $9 billion, and we are not even asking them to write it off. We are asking them to restructure it. So this is not something that even the Chinese government, you know, when I said that there will be a go home China, what I said was, when President Gotabaya Rajapaksa was not sensitive to the voice of the Sri Lankans, when President Gotabaya Rajapaksa refused to listen to the Sri Lankans stood up and said, go home Gota. And if you know, right now, I think there are very few MPs or people who speak about the real issue of why the IMF is not, the agreement hasn't come. The government can't do it. It's the responsibility of the opposition, because the government will want to try and, you know, come to an agreement. They can't be confrontational. So it's the opposition's responsibility on behalf of Sri Lanka to create awareness so that the Chinese government will agree at least.
But
if that doesn't happen,
Dr. Harshadi Silva said, I mean, the opposition also seems to be wanting to ensure that Sri Lanka's relations with China are not hurt by the sort of comments
the opposition's role is to work on behalf of 22 million Sri Lankans, not just on behalf of a party. So if somebody, an individual, feels that they shouldn't antagonize China for their future, that is not acceptable. I am talking on behalf of Sri Lankans, not on behalf of my party. Right? So if even for us, a lot of Tamil people are saying, why are you getting involved? You know, let them fight it out. But I am speaking on behalf of 22 million people. But that go home China comment that I said was that people of Sri Lanka will stand up eventually when there is enough understanding of what the problem is, where the problem lies. People will stand up, and I said, when that happens, I will stand with them, because that's where and also for, you know, the Chinese government also, that's not a good trend that they want to start. There'll be, you know, it will be an international thing, a global thing. So it's not, this is not a threat, but this is on, we have a plea on behalf of the people of Sri Lanka to, you know, no point saying we are giving medicine for 1 billion rupees, or we are giving rice for 2 billion rupees, we are giving equipment for 2 billion rupees, all in rupees, when they are stalling the entire IMF process. That is what is causing the supply shortage of supply. Now if we have an IMF program, it's only 2.9 billion or something, but then the door opens for us to at least borrow. I mean, I'm not for borrowing. I don't agree that borrowing is the way forward. But at least if there's essential shortage of essential drugs, now the cancer hospital doesn't have drugs. There are no cannulas in the medical hospital. You have to buy it from outside and take it if you want to put it on, right? So these shortages are causing severe hardships to our people. So on one hand, they're not supporting the IMF restructure, which would then allow us to borrow to at least import the essential medicine from through these loans. On the other hand, they are seen as donating medicine. So this is for someone who really wants to look into this. It's very obvious.
Is there more that India can or should be doing in not just assisting the people of the North and East, but the country as a whole? I mean, to counter this whole Chinese issue.
Well, I think, look, see, you're putting me in a bit of a tough spot because I will sound like an advocate for India, that I'm betting on behalf of India. But just think about it. In March 2022, if India had turned away $5 billion worth of fuel, medicine, food, you know, Sri Lanka we would have had, you know, people fighting against people, because there'll be, you know, shortages of food, and there'll be people, you know, fighting over food amongst other people, not protesting against the state. When there were fuel shortage, the entire country came to a standstill. The country would have been a 24-hour blackout if not for India's 5 billion credit line. And we are talking about China giving 5 billion rupees worth of dry rations. India gave a credit line of $5 billion, right? So, and if India now wants to restructure its existing debt, leaving out this 5 billion, I think that's fair. You know, they came in a time where Sri Lanka was facing hardship. So China could have done the same. I think they gave a debt swap of 2 billion yuan or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I have to check the figures. But see, they didn't give that money just to the North and East. And even the the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister's donations, Honorable Stalin's donations went across the country. You know, and in Trinco and all these districts, the Sinhala people also got, they didn't say only give it to the Tamils of Indian origin, they didn't say only give it to the Tamils. So I don't want to sound like, and even look at the USAID, USAID, I mean, even the vaccinations, you know, and, you know, look at the equipment. It's just that I don't think diplomatically, they are not doing a marketing campaign here like the Chinese embassy is doing. That's the difference.
Finally, I mean, where do you see your party and the country heading in the next year?
Well, I am a very hopeful person, and it's important that we look at things optimistically and not be negative. And I think people of Sri Lanka also need some hope. There is no point in well, there are a few things that can happen. Number one, we come into IMF agreement, which will at least open to borrow, which will ease off the shortages and all that. That is one thing that will be immediate relief. And the second thing is, if President delivers on the promise of February 4th, Independence Day, and it's resolved, there is a possibility that large amounts of investments will come into Sri Lanka, not just Tamil investments. These are countries. You see, when up until 2009, from Mahinda Rajapaksas' period of the war, you know, the entire world supported the Rajapaksas to defeat the LTTE, right? But only on one promise. It was that we understand that the Tamil people of this country require a political solution, but the way that they should be given that is not through war. See, not all Tamil people were part of the war, but the LTTE were fighting for a separate state because they were deprived, the Tamil people were deprived of the political solution or political right for 30 years after independence, which is why they took up arms, and there were Tamil leaders who were, you know, mysteriously killed as well. We don't know who killed them.
Yeah.
So in 2009, Mahinda Rajapaksa gave the entire world the promise of saying, we will resolve the issues of the Tamil people through dialogue. Please help us defeat the LTTE. The world supported Mahinda Rajapaksa. And from then till today, Mahinda Rajapaksa and his successors all have not kept that promise, which is why most of the countries don't even want to help Sri Lanka. So a promise that is given to the world is a promise regardless of Mahinda or Maitri. The government of Sri Lanka's promise was to resolve this issue. So Ranil Wickremesinghe understands that, which is why he's trying to resolve that issue. I mean, I don't know how genuine he is or not, but for us, he is trying. So if he resolves that by the 4th of February, or whatever date, these countries that helped Sri Lanka, towards the last year of the war, will invest in this country. We have a debt of 52 billion or something like that. I mean, I know Tamil business people who have 5-7 billion as their net worth.
Yeah. And even the Tamil diaspora has been openly saying that they are willing to get involved.
So even Tamil Nadu, linguistically, is able to get their investors to come and invest in the north and the east. Because only why I say north and the east is because language is easy, accessibility is easy. Now we have flights operating to Palali, through Palali.
Yeah.
If the ferry service works, then there are other opportunities. So what I'm saying is, for Sri Lankans, if these things happen, if the IMF comes, shortages may be eased out. If the large scale investments come, that is the only way that the dollar can also, the rupee can be strengthened. Unless the rupee is strengthened, all these the prices are not going to fall. Also, there is 2 more things that we proposed at the budget. One thing was that the taxation on the tobacco. If the government has done 2 or 3 changes, one was the pay tax, the other one was the tobacco, and cut down defense spending by the capital expenditure that is unnecessarily, that we feel is unnecessarily being spent, not even on the soldiers. So when you say cut down defense spending, people are going to say, we are not talking about the soldiers' wages at all, or their food. We are talking about the exorbitant expenditure that the superior higher officials enjoy through taxpayers' money. So if those proposals they had adhered to, also the pay tax, we are not talking about pensioners or people who are retired, or we are talking about professionals who earn millions of rupees every year. We are not talking about IT professional who gets paid from his salary. We are talking about people who charge professional fees into millions of rupees. Only 3 or 4% of the country's population earn that amount of money. Tax them. Pay tax, bring it to 15%. We propose 180 billion through that. Through the tobacco taxation, we propose 40 billion through that. And the defense one, we propose another 50 or 60 billion. So with this 280 billion into the government's revenue, they can reduce indirect taxes on exercise books, on shoes, school bags, paripu or milk or whatever, cut down the indirect taxes, because the government, we can't say cut down the direct taxes without a alternative. So the alternative is to increase our revenue through these taxation and reduce the taxation on these sort of things. So unless these things happen, we won't have a better future, but we are hopeful and we will be pushing for that. And I think the citizens of the country need to be hopeful, and there is no point in giving electoral pledges on political platforms unless there is a way to resolve it.
I mean, since we spoke a bit about national security or the defense budget, and about, you mentioned the LTTE there, there's also talk of the LTTE trying to revive itself, trying to regroup, and these reports are coming from India and other countries as well. I mean, would the TNA, what sort of position would the TNA take if it is true that the LTTE is actually regrouping?
Well, there is, during election times, or when the going gets tough for the government, there's all these rumors that come up.
But these rumors are coming from India. It's not from our country.
Look, there can be rumors that can come from anywhere. There are, look at the Easter Sunday attacks. It's still unresolved. Yeah. So country needs a boogeyman. Rather the government needs a boogeyman. Sometimes the opposition also needs a boogeyman, not the main opposition. Yeah. But, I'm talking about the likes who worked against agreements like MCC. Look at, if the MCC agreement had come, we would have had a rapid bus transport service. I was so upset this morning when I saw, not upset, I was just thinking about Sri Lanka's sorry state when I saw Bangladesh opening its first LRT this morning. That could have been us. Yeah. If not for Gotabaya. I saw someone had posted on Twitter, I don't know if it's true, saying Badu geniyanna be ape katte taken so awashya naha, some expert, I don't know how true that is. So these sort of rumors come, and I don't think we should waste our time on these sort of things.
Thank you, Mr. Rasamanickam, for joining us on the program today, and I guess it's my duty to wish you the best for 2023.
Thank you, Easwaran, for having me on the show, and I would like to wish your audience and everyone in Sri Lanka all the very best, and let's hope that 2023, which is the 75th year of independence, puts the country on a new course, and wish you all the very best.
Thank you. And that's all the time we have for you for On Fire for this week and of course for this year. Till our next program, stay safe.